Breaking today, the corrupt mainstream media and royal rota are spinning Prince Harry's dud flop meeting with King Charles to try and clear the way for Meghan Markle's return. It comes as the duplicitous Duke, desperately trying to win over Brits, has flown to Ukraine again, which he thinks will garner him even more positive headlines. His spokespeople have even released a quote on his behalf, talking about how much he loved his time in the United Kingdom. Does he think we're stupid? Does he think we've forgotten his 6 years of digs? The fact that in the Harry and Meghan Netflix documentary, actually, they dismissed most Brits as racist Brexiteers. But of course, this charm offensive is almost quite fun to watch because it's so desperate. And we saw that when Harry gave his final speech in the United Kingdom, having just met King Charles. And again, this sort of weirdly almost threatening blokey banter was back. Watch. Big news, Outspoken is now available as a podcast too. So please do subscribe wherever you get yours, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and make sure you rate and review. I'll take 5 stars, if you may.
Surely. This is what I'm talking about, you see. You've been up here too long. I think this whole thing's been delayed slightly, so at this point you're probably hammered, which was part of the plan all along. Stuck up here at the top of the gherkin.
Am I the only one who really hates the way he gives speeches? I'm just so bored of this. But look, there is some serious reporting out of Shooter Scoop, and you know here on Outspoken we have been very across this, although we have tried to do this in a sensitive manner. The real reason behind the meeting is because Charles is just, how do I put this, getting increasingly concerned about his ongoing battle with incurable cancer. So here's the reporting from Rob Shooter, who writes, Prince Harry's surprise tea with King Charles wasn't just about family forgiveness. It was about preparing for the worst. The king's health is far worse than the palace lets on, whispers one royal insider. That's why Harry was summoned. This isn't about reconciliation. It's about succession. Queen Elizabeth quietly battled cancer in her final years, keeping it secret even from close family. But Charles took the opposite approach, announcing his diagnosis in February 2024 after prostate surgery revealed something more serious. It was a mistake, sighs another palace source. Once people know a monarch is dying, the power starts shifting, and that's already happening. Bottom line, Harry's reunion with Charles wasn't a warm and fuzzy family moment. It was a grim reminder that Britain's king may not have much time left. And of course, let me just repeat the details that we know about the visit. Harry was forced to go through the public entrance. According to Lady Colin Campbell here on Outspoken yesterday, he spent less than half an hour, she believes 25 minutes, directly with the monarch. They were never in the room on their own. So, to PR expert, royal commentator, and YouTuber Lauren Lunn Farrow. Lauren, look, there's a lot the media doesn't seem to want to say about this meeting because they are so desperate to try and rehabilitate Prince Harry at the moment. But in all seriousness, how can they try and say that this was a positive thing, that this was a good thing? I mean, Charles hasn't seen his son in 18 months and he spent less than half an hour with him. Clearly, this is about the health. Clearly, this is about King Charles desperately trying to find a way to see the 2 grandchildren, which we'll come to in just a moment. But what's your overall view on why the mainstream media this week continue to try and push what I think is just a dead duck, the idea that Harry is some sort of beloved son who the British public want to return?
Because the mainstream media, they exist to make money. They are a for-profit corporation. So they are so heavily reliant on the royal family for content and for news. And do you remember, and this has been going on for a long time with Charles and Harry back in cahoots, I believe, because on the 11th of July, we had Charles's aides and Harry's aides meeting at the ROSL club. And I came onto Outspoken and I told your viewers that this was set up and it was leaked because it was on private property. So we know this has been going on for much, much longer than is being let on. And I just feel it's so disingenuous that people are not being given the truth from the mainstream media. This is performative. And I think Harry coming back over, you know, the arrogance is unbelievable. We all have eyes, we have ears, and we have the internet. We are able to see and remind ourselves exactly how he has behaved and exactly what he has done. The reason the mainstream press will not be truthful about this is because their business model, if you take politicians and you take the royals out of the mainstream business model, there is very little news that would sell. So they are towing the line. I believe King Charles has made a call at the very, very top of the media hierarchy, and we know that 90% of the media is owned by 3 corporations in the UK. And I believe they are on side to turn the narrative on Harry at the request of King Charles, because King Charles's health is in a terrible way, and there is no other way that mainstream media would consider writing favorably about Harry. But what really gets my goat is in between this is the great British public that are wondering what on earth is going on. And they are ultimately being gaslit. They have been fed and really riled up by the mainstream media. And now all of a sudden it seems to have, you know, totally been forgotten everything Harry's done.
Indeed. And my goodness, they think we're stupid. And the great thing is, I think now the mainstream media are losing the power to set this narrative, but they are trying. I mean, this was the spokesperson quote from Harry. So we know this came from Harry direct. And Matt Wilkinson, the royal editor of The Sun, sort of dutifully posted it on X. And the spokesman wrote, he's obviously loved being back in the UK, catching up with old friends, colleagues, and just generally being able to support the incredible work of the causes that mean so much to him. And it's like, honestly, we know you hate us. You have spent the past 6 years doing down our country. You know that you now need proximity to the royal family to try and turn things around and make money back in Montecito. We're not going to be so stupid. But the Royal News Network responded to that post, Lauren. And I'm interested to know what you think about this. They wrote, just curious, what was the point of Megxit and why all the vitriol towards the UK and his family over the years? He's basically back to square one, which makes his temper tantrums look all the worse and pointless. And a good 4 days doesn't make up for 5+ years of nastiness. And I totally agree with that, Lauren. I totally agree. It's like, he must think we're so stupid to think that this is anything other than a strategy. A strategy because the money tap has been turned off, because the Spotify deal is gone, because the Netflix deal is gone, because the corporates are not interested, because he has to try and now convince the world that actually the royal family and the British public and the Commonwealth that I spent the past 6 years so desperately slagging off, actually, I really like them. It's not gonna fly.
And also, it was so highly curated, this trip. And I want your viewers to realize that when I worked as a publicist, if I had a client doing an overseas trip for, let's say, 4 days, I was working on that for months and months. And I knew the narrative and the image I wanted to create. And everything from their hair and makeup to every single interview, every single question, wherever they would be photographed, that was all pre-approved and planned, and everything was done with strategy. Now, if I was doing that as someone that was looking after household and tabloid fodder names, you only have to look at this trip to see how long the royal household and Harry's team have been working to really take advantage of the great British public and to try and erase every single thing that's happened. And it was what they tried to create is a bulletproof narrative, because you he got off of the plane. He went to the grave of the late Queen. He then went on to Wellchild, where there were sick children and very vulnerable children, and some children that are living with the most horrific illnesses and may not have long. He then goes on to allegedly give 1.1 million, although that's a whole different can of worms. And so all of a sudden, and then he goes on to see his father who has cancer. So all of a sudden, the mainstream media are not doing what their job, or what they're allegedly supposed to do, which is questioning, pushing, investigating. This was a narrative that was highly curated, and they have been working on this for months. And then Harry pops over from, being with Meghan, eating their sprinkle flowers, pulling carrots out their fake allotment, over here to go on some nauseating charm offensive whereby the mainstream media are backed into a corner. And I think because of woke cancel culture, they actually can't, they're like, oh, we can't say this, we can't say that, we can't, question anything. And then that paves the way for what I believe Charles has done and stepped in to say to the mainstream media, this has to change.
Yes.
This is dominating my reign.
And exactly. And he knows that he doesn't have long left of the reign, which is why all of this pressure has been put on. Lauren, where do you stand? Because this is a highly contentious issue, and it's one of those issues actually that certainly divides the Outspoken audience. Now, I tend to lean towards transparency, but also respect for people's private health information. However, I do believe when you are dealing with the head of state, it is relevant. How do you feel about the British mainstream media deciding to effectively conspire with Buckingham Palace? That is what they're doing. I know some people will think it's the right thing to do, to cover up the truth of Charles's cancer battle.
I think it's awful. And I think the mainstream media have let your viewers and people all around the country down time and time again. There is no transparency. This is becoming a drip-fed EastEnders soap opera to people, and people can see through it. Of course, it's awful that Charles is battling cancer, and everyone wishes him a full and speedy recovery. But if that is not happening, then please stop treating the great British public like children. We do not need to be our hand held. We do not need to be manipulated. We need transparency from news channels that are alleging they're giving us news when they're simply not. They are pushing out propaganda. And that is why so many people now have their eyes open and can see that. But it is, he does have cancer, and it also shouldn't be something that isn't spoken about. Many, many families around the country are battling cancer, and I do think it's something that should be spoken about. It's not something that is taboo.
Exactly. And I do think there is a difference between him and Catherine, the Princess of Wales, too. He is the head of state. It matters. We know behind the scenes the political power is moving towards Prince William already. So surely we shouldn't live in a world where that is covered up from the public. And by the way, as well, when you actually saw the pictures, and Meghan's mole did this great side-by-side of Prince Harry arriving at Clarence House versus when he left Clarence House, it was very obvious that the meeting hadn't gone well. And as, according to Taz posted on this, smug face arriving, slapped ass face leaving. He had less than an hour with his pa. I don't believe Harry looked upset because of the king's health. I believe he looks upset because he didn't get what he wanted. The king simply shut down his victim narrative by meeting with him. And I actually thought that was very good analysis.
I love those accounts. I think it is. And I think, Harry and Charles, we have to hold Charles accountable. And I know that in a world of cancel culture, people will say, well, he's got cancer. You can't say anything bad about him. Well, he is still our head of state, and he, I believe, should be more transparent with people. He has allowed Harry to come in and completely gaslight the entire nation. We've all read what Harry has said, what he's done. He has behaved despicably, and your mainstream media are lying to you. Just look at what they are writing. It is propaganda. It is a press release that has been sent out. And, I feel as well, it's really important to say that the mainstream media are incapable of writing positively about all members of the royal family at the same time. So just sit back and watch. Catherine
Yes.
and William, they'll be getting it in
Well,
the
they
neck from the
are.
mainstream press for doing nothing but purely keeping their heads down, doing their job and being classy, something that Harry knows nothing about.
Absolutely. I mean, look at the headline from Liz Jones in the
Oh,
Daily Mail, who, remember, I have revealed as the woman who the editor sets out as the attack dog. Harry is doing everything right. I am overjoyed at his long-awaited reunion with Charles. But then there's the kicker. Now, mean William needs to get off his high horse. Now, that was the main column, Lauren, that the Daily Mail commissioned immediately after the visit. And again, for folk who don't know how the mainstream media works, that's the editor trying to set the narrative of the visit. And I think it's totally wrong. Sure, there's been a big backlash now, and Richard Eden, who is much more pro William and Catherine and much more anti Harry and Meghan, has come out with sort of a follow-up column saying, no, Liz Jones, that's not right. But this was the column that they wanted out there. They've also hired that awful Bryony Gordon woman, who is a total propagandist for Harry and Meghan. And so this is what's going on all the time. But first, let's be honest, what passes for journalism today is little more than politically charged activism with a headline slapped on top. Truth gets buried under layers of spin, agenda, and algorithm-driven narratives. That's why I turn to Ground News. It cuts straight through the noise and shows you exactly what's happening. Ground News brings together headlines from over 50,000 sources across the globe, but what really makes it powerful is the transparency. You don't just see the stories, you see the political bias behind every source, the ownership ties, and the coverage breakdown across the spectrum. That's why over 1 million people have downloaded Ground News. Even the Nobel Peace Center praised it as an excellent way to stay informed, avoid echo chambers, and expand your worldview. See for yourself at ground.news/outspoken. My favourite feature is the blind spot feed. It shows you which stories are blowing up on one side of the aisle, but barely mentioned on the other. It's the clearest way to see media bias in action. So here's an example of a story barely getting any traction on the right. Joe Rogan just accused the Trump administration of gaslighting its own supporters over the Epstein scandal. It's a rare moment of someone considered to be on the right openly calling out Trump's team in such blunt terms. And here's one the left is completely ignoring. Reports say Kash Patel discovered burn bags stuffed with classified documents tied to the Trump-Russia probe. In other words, there may have been a deliberate effort to destroy evidence, yet almost no one on the left wants to touch it. I wonder why. With every story, Ground News shows you the entire spectrum of who's reporting from left, right, and centre, and how reliable each source is. Also, importantly, who owns each outlet? It's everything the corporate press doesn't want you to see or know. And right now, you can get 40% off the Vantage plan, which gives you unlimited access to all the features I personally use for just $5 per month. Just visit ground.news/outspoken, click the link in the description, or scan the QR code on screen. That's ground.news/outspoken. But now, back to the show.
yeah. And this is why I say it's come from the top down. This is, let's remember, Harry has sued every single media conglomerate in the country. So, he has gone to court with them. There's another court battle in 2026. There is no way they're going to write positively about him. This has come from our King Charles, and it has gone to the very, very top of those corporations. And this is propaganda. This is fake news. And, we're in 2025. This is unbelievable that this is happening. This is no different to Project Mockingbird, which was purely propaganda content coming out.
What's
And I think
quite
it's
Oh, sorry,
I
you
was just
finish
going
your
to say,
point.
I think it's really unfair as well because we hold a space for the royals. And, as a nation, we genuinely care. And so to see William and Catherine treated like this by the press when they have done nothing wrong, and it is Harry who has said the most despicable things. I just think that is the press, and we've seen people are kind of unsubscribing to the Mail podcast and everything like that. They're playing a really dangerous game because William and Catherine have the nation's hearts, and William will one day unite, I believe, the country in a way that people haven't been able to do before.
100%. 100%. And where I guess there is some sympathy, though, Lauren, and I want to take you through this reporting from the Mail, which I believe has come from sources close to King Charles, and where there is some sympathy, and I do understand this, is it's about the grandchildren, right? And I think what Harry and Meghan are doing is actually despicable because it's like the only thing they have got left to leverage. And while I'm sure it was a painful decision for William and Catherine, I think they've accepted we're not going to have a relationship with our niece and our nephew, at least until they are of an age where it could be their decision to get in touch. But Charles is not prepared with just a couple of, well, who knows, but Charles is not prepared to make a decision like that. He does want to reunite. And so this briefing, and remember, I used to work at the Mail, so this is why I'm pretty certain this has come via King Charles, given I know who reported it. King Charles is set to reunite with his grandchildren, Archie and Lilibet, after 3 years following reconciliation talks. And let me just take you to the source quotes, Lauren, where the source close to the king says, the king wants to be a grandfather to his grandchildren, so that's an important pull. He was so pleased when they came over for Queen Elizabeth's Platinum Jubilee and he was able to spend some time with them, a royal source told the Daily Mail today. It's become clear that Harry now regrets some of his actions. He wants to reset his relationship with his family and with the people of the UK. It's hard to see him ever coming back to live in Britain, but this may be the start of something that at least allows them to be a functioning wider family again. There are all sorts of obstacles to that happening, again, because of Harry's insistence that they have guaranteed armed police protection, but maybe there is a way of getting them over to Balmoral or Sandringham next year or another royal residence where they are within the security perimeter. And again, I just stress that I do believe that this has come from sources close to King Charles. There was one other story too, Lauren, which was interesting too, because it made it clear that Prince Harry had promised King Charles to keep his mouth shut. And a royal insider also told the Daily Mail, this is an important first step towards rebuilding their father and son relationship. He has told his father he won't be giving any interviews about it, and his team have been instructed not to brief journalists about what was said. There's a long way to go before Harry can earn his family's trust, but he's given some reassurances. And so again, fascinating to me because this is King Charles now setting the agenda. But what makes me so angry is that all they've got is the children. Because, Lauren, they could have already flown in secretly to Balmoral to meet King Charles. They don't have to tell anyone if they're doing that. So I honestly do believe Harry is sort of using his children in some type of ploy to try and get the security, and it's sick. It's truly sick.
That 25-minute meeting, it was performative. If you want to meet someone, there are many, many ways that you can do it without anyone knowing, because I have done it for clients.
Exactly, privately. They hadn't even spoken on the phone, Lauren.
Yeah, it is entirely possible. I would say that you have to disregard anything you see of Prince Harry, and you must not trust it because nothing is honest about this. And then you've got Meghan, who, seems to, for someone that claims she wants her children to, be out of the spotlight, she sure does know how to wheel them out in moments of desperation. And I find that very, very concerning. And like you say, Dan, they could have come over here at any point with the children. And you know what? If they had the right people around them, which Harry and Meghan don't, they would have been able to get in and out of the country, I believe, without anyone knowing.
Absolutely, they would have, but they don't want to do that. That is the point,
Yeah.
because, as you say, this was all performative, because what they want to do, Lauren, is show to the money makers, the people pulling the strings over in Hollywood, see, we're back in the royal fold. It's pathetic, but it's very clear what they're doing. It was interesting, though, that Rob Shooter reported that Prince William was blindsided by this meeting. And again, this really does add to the reporting that we have been doing here, Lauren, for some time, that relations between William and Charles are quite strained at the moment. Rob Shooter reported that Prince William was left stunned after finding out at the very last second that King Charles had agreed to a secret sit-down with Prince Harry. Palace insiders whispered to Shooter Scoop that William wasn't consulted about the reunion and only learned of it once Charles was already on his way to Clarence House. William thought his father was back in London strictly for cancer treatment and official audiences. One courtier reveals he had no idea Harry was on the schedule and certainly wasn't asked for input. And that, sources say, was the point. If William had been consulted, he would have tried to block it, a royal insider explains. That's why Charles went ahead quietly. I found that really interesting. They also reported that Camilla knows how deep the wounds run between William and Harry. But what do you make of the fact that Charles almost has cut William out of this decision-making process, Lauren?
I think it's so disrespectful on so many levels. First of all, he is William's father. But second of all, William is going to be our king one day. And so these are not just simply personal family decisions that are being made. These are performative spectacles as well on a stage, and it does damage the royal family. And so part of me feels like King Charles is doing his trying to please everyone move, and then it's William and Catherine that will have to pick up the pieces and rebuild trust. Now, there is so much love and support for William and Catherine, but that doesn't take away from the fact that Charles is not doing anything to strengthen trust with the monarchy in terms of the public. I just still can't believe the brazen nature of Harry coming in and the 4-day whirlwind, topped off with a 25-minute performative coffee. And he may as well have done a photo call outside,
Yes.
Oh, yeah, it went great.
Lauren,
Let's
I do
just go back to Montecito.
I do just have to ask you quickly, though, because your post on Instagram really made me laugh. This idea that he's sort of like back in the A-list. No, he's not. He was hanging out with Peter Andre. God bless him. Very, very nice guy. But Peter Andre and his wife. And then look at this, a whole load of sort of Z-list types. I mean, I like these people. I don't know who that is next to Kimberly Walsh. She used to be in Girls Aloud. I'm not sure who that is. I don't know if you know, Lauren, on the far left. And then Jenny
it's
Faulkner
probably
and
someone from Love Island.
Jamie
I don't
Lang.
know.
Well, I know. So it's like, it's not even like the celebrities really wanted to be near him. And you wrote, if anyone wants to know how leaving the royal family worked out for Harry, see below. And it does show you. I mean, Taylor Swift is hanging out with Prince William. Prince Harry is hanging out with Kimberly Walsh and Peter Andre. Just saying.
I tell you what I do think is interesting, though, seeing the press, the 4-day press schedule that Harry did. It did run like a press schedule, and it's interesting seeing when Meghan is out of the equation what a different side to Harry people see, and you don't see, Meghan dominates everything. She is so disingenuous and fake. And whilst I do not trust Harry and I can't stand him, I do think it's interesting how they are very separately trying to rehabilitate their images. But it will not work, because when Harry and Meghan are back in Montecito, they are driven by ego, and they are hot-headed, and they do not listen to the people that they've got on the payroll, and it's vast amounts of people. So this may be a kind of a little mini bridge at the moment where people may see more favorable coverage, but this is purely because I believe it has come from the instruction of the king. This is the only reason. And so you need not worry, everyone. Harry and Meghan will continue to be Harry and Meghan, which will ultimately continue to be their demise because they refuse to fall into a hierarchical, whatever the word is, structure. They are not able to work as a team with other people because they are driven by their egos.
Very well put, Lauren Lunn Farrow. And of course, we've been talking about why you need our coverage, because it is the coverage that you will not get from the Royal Rota and the mainstream media. So if you do want conversations twice the length of what you've just seen, please do sign up to the Outspoken Substack, www.outspoken.live. Paid monthly or annual members get first access to the Royal Uncancelled After Show Monday to Friday, live or on demand with no advertising whatsoever. Substack is a free speech platform. It protects me from big tech cancellation. www.outspoken.live. Come and join our royal community. Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews, and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go, wherever you are.